Right. Good afternoon. Did I shock you? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Teresa McLaurin. I'm the DEI chair for ITC this year. And I wanted to bring something in to help us all understand more about DEI in allyship, because a lot of us think, well, wait a second, I am an ally, I help people, and we don't really understand what's the big deal. So we've asked Ruth Cotter to come in and talk about it a bit. But before that, I wanted to thank the IEEE Computer Society for sponsoring DEI and our lunches, as well as Jyotika Atavali. And I'd like to invite Jyotika to come up. She is a director of RAS Architecture at Synopsys, and she's also the president of the IEEE Computer Society. So, Jyotika.
Thank you very much, Teresa, and thank you so much for organizing this panel. This is really special. I'd like to thank all of the organizers of ITC for organizing this great conference, and it's been an honor to be here today and participate in this very important topic. So I just wanted to share a few slides describing the work that we do in the Computer Society, specifically on D&I, which is very central and integral to our goals and our mission. So it's not just something that we do to support activities, but it is a commitment that we make, and it's a theme that belongs and is purposefully built into each one of our activities and initiatives, in all of the different program board areas and all of the activities that we drive in our initiatives. So here's the maintaining the focus in D&I. This is part of our 2024-2025 Computer Society Strategic Plan and our goals, which are to engage more representation from industry, more early career professionals. But in all of the activities that we do, in all of the technical activities, including the conferences, standards, publications, chapter activities, educational programs, we try to maintain or make that effort to promote representation from D&I communities, including women, including people across ages, across geos, across different technical disciplines, because we firmly believe that doing that will enhance the value of what we do as a community. So some of our goals and initiatives described here, we have within the Computer Society Board of Governors, we have a D&I committee that is a standing committee that reports to the Board of Governors and drives new initiatives on various different topics, such as webinars, such as collaborating with other societies. One of the new things that I'll talk about in the next slide, we work closely with the IEEE Women in Engineering organization, and we are bringing back a conference, international leadership conference focused on women, promoting their development from mid to senior level women. And so that will come back next year in May of 2025 in San Jose. I'll be serving as general chair for that, working closely with the Women in Engineering organization. But we also have a grant program that we drive each year. So it's a D&I grant program, and we do a call each year where we encourage submissions, and then we award financial support for some of those selected projects. In addition, we also do have a foundation fund that we have in conjunction with the IEEE Foundation, where we set aside a certain dollar amount each year for D&I initiatives. So here's more about that Women in Engineering International Leadership Conference, and we just had a call for speakers that where submissions, the submission deadline was this weekend, this past weekend, and now we are working to define the program, the registration, and we really look forward to your participation and support. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nitza. Nitza Basoco will moderate this next session here. She is a technologist and strategist for marketing at Teradyne. Thanks.
Thank you so much. What's this one? Hello. Thank you, Jyotika. Today we're going to have a very open and as transparent as chat as possible. I know it's important that we give you insight on our journeys and how impactful allyship has been along the way. But before I get started, I want to ask the audience a few questions. How many here are DFT engineers? How about test development engineers? How many have been in the industry less than 5 years? How many have been less than 20 years? And how many over 20 years? I've been in the industry for over 23 years. I started my career off at Teradyne as a factory applications engineer. Then I went to Broadcom, and I was the first female test development engineer. 7 years later, there was 200 test development engineers. I was test development engineer number 23, and only 8 women. And I loved my time as a TDE. I loved it. But since then, I've done everything possible to ensure that my departments were as diverse as possible. I'd like to introduce, joining me for a fireside chat, Ruth Cotter, Senior Vice President at AMD, overseeing marketing, communications, as well as human resources. She has led the company during a large period of growth, where they have seen the workforce more than double with a strong focus on diversity, inclusion, with improved company policies, benefits, and company engagement. I love that AMD is increasing awareness with their campaign, Together We Advance. Ruth led the company through successful acquisition of Xilinx in 2022, and will again do so as AMD has announced their intention of acquiring ZT Systems. Ruth is the executive sponsor of AMD Pride and Women's Forum employee resource groups. She serves on the GSA Women's Leadership Council, where she is active in initiatives that provide inspiration and sponsorship for the next generation. Please help me in welcoming Ruth Cotter. Hi. Thank you, Ruth. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm happy to be in San Diego. I travel a lot, so it's an absolute pleasure to be able to fly in and fly out of somewhere in the same day. So thank you for that opportunity.
You're welcome. Welcome to San Diego. Now, just wanted to kick off with a definition.
Yeah.
What is, or how would you define being an ally?
Oh, being an ally can take many forms. I think it can take the form of sponsorship. It can take the form of advocacy. It can take the form of being a really good listener. And I think really if I look at it at the highest level, it's how can we mirror the society in which we live every day in the workplace and generate energy to make that replicable.
I'll completely agree. And I love that you said listening and active listening. So it's really important to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Now, is there a story that you can share with the audience of when you needed an ally and there was somebody there and was a good ally to you?
Yeah, some years ago, I was a manager in the finance organization, and I felt I was ready for promotion. And my peers and the next level of leadership felt I was ready for promotion. And the conversation that happens around your promotion, you're never there. Well, you're very rarely there. So you're reliant on everybody else in the room to advocate for you and on your behalf. Well, the CFO at the time, Bob, decided there wasn't a snowball's chance that I should be promoted, and I was not ready for promotion. I own responsibility for that, obviously, because I hadn't shown him that I was probably ready. But my ally, Devinder, spoke up on my behalf in my absence because he really knew me. And he did it in a voice that I probably would have chosen to do for myself as well. And he convinced Bob to, let's not disagree on whether she's ready or not, but let's give her a chance. Let's give her an opportunity for 6 months. And if she doesn't succeed in the way that you imagine she may not, then that's fine. But let's give her the interim opportunity. And because of Devinder and him investing in me and knowing what was important to me, I got the opportunity, and I've never looked back.
That's perfect.
It's my 23rd year at AMD, and I've happily moved along in my career there. So it's been great. Thanks to Devinder.
Yeah, thankfully for that ally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but you mentioned that your CFO wasn't an ally.
No.
And is there any other time in your career where you felt that somebody you were hopeful that they would be an ally to you, but the way that they presented it or came across didn't work quite so well for you?
Yeah, I'm the kind of person who thinks, good things happen those who work hard. A little old schoolish, but that's kind of the way I have operated within my career. And one of our CEOs, long time before our current CEO, but I always thought he was very supportive. I would have called him an ally of mine, always encouraging me to take on more things. But as I looked over it, there was no fuel coming back from taking on additional work. There was no promotion path, there was no career path for me. And I kind of woke up one day and I'm like, I'm taking on all these other things, but I'm really not going anywhere. Well, it turned out he really wasn't an ally. He wanted me exactly where I was in the company doing this additional work because he wanted me to be part of the team that I was on, serving the company in that way, and had no desire or investment in advancing my career, which is why I was investing in all these other things. So it was a hard lesson to learn, and maybe taught me to read the signals a little bit better. But yeah, that was I think a two-way street in terms of me feeling like I was being led to believe that I was being supported and invested in when I really wasn't.
So what were some of the signals that you wish you would have noticed beforehand, and things that you would have changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think the additional opportunities that came my way, I saw them as opportunities for growth, because I love learning, and I really enjoy feedback and acting on that feedback. Mm-hmm. But I think, the amount of additional projects that I had taken on was probably silly on my part, and I should have sort of consulted with others as to what is this laddering towards if I think about specializing. At that time, I specialized in Wall Street and investor relations, and how was it taking on a social project or a human resource project, laddering me up as part of a Wall Street career. It just didn't make sense.
Right, so kind of looking forward in advance and trying to see what's the impact of what you were doing today to move you forward. Looking
around the corner, right? You want any journey that we all take, even if it's not immediately kind of what might be aligned with career advancement or whatever it is you're dealing with, knowing that there's a forward plan over the next 3 to 5 years and that you're looking around the corner, so it's adding up for some good is a good thing.
No, it's very good advice.
Yeah.
And what do you believe your role is being an ally?
Well, now I have the privilege of the role I have at the company, so I get to talk to a lot of people around the world. Sharing my experiences, I think, is hopefully informative for people, and will help you as you go back to your own teams and think about their experiences and try and walk in their shoes. I have learned that talking really is 80% listening and only 20% of actually words coming out of your mouth. So I practice that a lot. I'm Irish. I grew up in Europe. I work in the US in an American company that has US-centric business protocols and environment, but we're a very global company. There's a lot of baggage that just surrounds me, so making sure that I can sort of put that down and really try to stand in somebody else's shoes and understand how I'm being received by them, and am I being effective in my ability to help them in whatever moment, or the moment that matters that they find themselves in. I think is really, really important. And then investing in the next generation of people either in the company or we'd like to attract into the industry, I think is really, really important. The industry is working very hard to continue to diversify and to be really inclusive, but it is disappointing if you think about the amount of money as a collective we're all investing as companies, and are we really materially moving the needle? So there's more to be done, particularly as you think about the backdrop of artificial intelligence and sort of the new education system, and it's also fresh and new. How do we attract more diverse communities to want to pursue that and to pursue our industry?
Right.
So trying to help with all that.
And so how do you help with the companies create a strategy to work with the universities? Yesterday in Phil Nye's meeting, some of the professors said that they have to make a test attractive to their students, right? AI is all the mode. So what are the things that we need to do in order to ensure that the institutes have what they need in order to bring people into the semiconductor industry?
Yeah, for us, you know, we've gone from being quite a small company to now being a very big company. It really is about relationships. In the early days, it was harnessing people who had, you know, strong relationships or personal preference for maybe their own alma mater or whatever it might be, and getting in with some of the professors there, lending into the curriculum and influencing the curriculum, donating product, donating time. Has been very, very beneficial, and universities have really responded to that. As you think about the area of underrepresented communities, we do a lot of work with the HBCUs, the historically black colleges and universities, as well as the Hispanic institutions, to really bring them also in exchange into the workplace, where you can have those exchange programs between technology, helping write some of the curriculum, and then bringing people in for practical experience into your company. Even if it's a couple of students, it makes a huge difference. And then you build from there. The other area is actually through industry associations, right? You know, I think many people here have different engagements. IEEE does, the GSA does, the SIA, all the different industry associations, and you can also participate through those if you're very small and you can't really move the needle on your own.
Oh, that's great. I know that as a small company, I did a lot of stuff with GSA in order to kind of put our name out there.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So then if you look internally to AMD, what specific strategies has the company implemented to advance women and underrepresented employees to leadership positions?
Yeah, it's very important, as we want to have a very inclusive workplace, that we have role models for employees as they think about, you know, what is it I might aspire to, and learning from that. We're obviously highly privileged with Lisa Su as our CEO. She's absolutely incredible and an amazing role model for anyone anywhere in the world.
Yeah, actually at GSA Wish last year, she mentioned that she has a lot of men coming into her office saying, I want your job, but no women.
No, never. Yeah. Still, even when she said it, still hasn't happened yet.
It still hasn't happened? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I don't know, is anyone brave enough out there though, really? She's just kind of redefined what being a CEO is. It's a high bar.
It's a high bar.
So what we want to do is really cultivate leadership paths and leadership tracks, in particular for some of our employees who might never imagine that they have that available to them. Right. So it's done through learning and development. It's done through a series of projects, so mapping out sort of a development track for our employees, putting them through different training. We have women in technology training that has a new effort that we're doing that is really, you've got the sort of academia, educational piece, you've got the practical application in the workplace, you have a dedicated mentor, you do real 360 feedback with a coach to help you interpret that and sort of reapply it. And then your journey is followed for 18 months through the success of that program. And that's proved really, really good. And then we have different groups across the company where we bring sort of like-minded people together to support themselves. So we have a lot of employee resource groups. So I'm sponsor of the women's group and the Pride group. We have 14 different groups across the company that has really cultivated opportunities where people can come together and really share in a safe place. And where a lot of us can also participate and learn that what works for me as a HR professional sitting in Santa Clara in California is not what's going to work for a software engineer sitting in Bangalore. So there's a lot of that cultivation of multi-voices across the table, which we think lends to some of our culture strength.
That's amazing. And is there one specific strategy that works better over the other? Is it location specific?
Yeah, it does vary sometimes by location because there's different cultural experiences. So we find at the end of the day, people actually really enjoy the learning and development activities, but they want a thread back to some connection in the workplace. So this sort of, I call it being a MAC. You can be a mentor, an advocate, a coach, or a connector. And you can be one of those things at different stages of your career, but you can also need those things at different stages of your career. Right. So we make sure that people who come out of our development activities, if they need a mentor or a coach, depending on what it is they need, we follow them on that journey to make sure that there's somebody there to help them interpret what they've learned or experienced kind of live in real work moments. If they feel like maybe they're being drowned out or they're not being heard or their ideas are being taken by somebody else as their ideas, that they can have, you know, a trusted conversation with someone to help them and guide them how to actually handle that situation and help the person maybe who's drowning them out sort of respond more positively. And often it's just because people aren't really thinking and it's kind of in the heat of the moment. Right. And it's good to call these things out sometimes. So.
And sometimes it's just helpful to have somebody to think about things with, right?
Yeah.
And to understand, did I do something here to help propagate something? Is it not me? Is it somebody else? Could I have done something different and to work through it? So.
Yeah, and it's not for life either. Like I know certainly when I started being sort of a mentor, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm truly committed to this person forever. But you can only give so much depending on your own experiences and where you are in your career to somebody else. And that's why I like the versatility of being a MAC, because you have different needs at different phases. Like sometimes, even now, I need coaching, but most of the time I just need somebody to tell me I'm not losing my mind and it's okay, and just keep going, you're fine. But, you know, 12 years ago, I needed somebody to say, hey, you know, you're being a bit Irish, which would mean the code for being a bit Irish was I was probably being a bit direct, whereas, you know, I could be softer and still land the message or the feedback I was trying to deliver a little bit more elegantly. Right. So again, we all have different needs.
And was that a coach who actually gave you that feedback, or somebody else within the company?
It was. So at AMD in my day, it's changed a little bit. When you became a CVP, it was like this intense analysis that you had to go through. You went off to this simulation for 2 days, and you were running a company. And there were these people behind a wall that were observing you. You had an email, your inbox was filling with emails. Your phone was ringing with imaginary board of directors, people screaming at you, where's my presentation? To just sort of really make sure you were well-rounded.
Threw you off a little.
It was very stressful. But you got so much feedback. Like you got those coaches in the simulation feedback. They did 360s in your company. They talked to all sorts of people in your sphere. And it was a lot. And at the time, the coach said to me, yes, it all matters. You're experienced, you can't forget you're experienced. You are who you are. It's not going to materially change, but you just need to round your edges a little bit. And he said, pick the one thing that offends you the most. Like, what is the one thing that you fundamentally disagree with and hurts the most privately? And he said, that's what you need to work on, because that's your blind spot, because you are unconsciously, immediately disagreeing with this thing.
Right.
And he said, it's somebody's truth, and you have to respect that as their truth. And it's going to test you as to whether you're really interested in investing in your growth or not.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and I've always held that true. Too much information, but my boss told me the other day I wasn't ambitious, and I was so offended by it, because I'm like, oh my God, like, if you knew me, like, my job changes every 6 months. I'm doing something different. And her perspective was, well, you've been at AMD for 23 years. I don't know that that's ambitious. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting, and I'm so offended. And then I'm thinking about, okay, how can I defend this? And then I'm like, what am I doing? Like, that's not what this is about. This is, let me help you understand why I'm ambitious, and that's actually why I've been here for 23 years. So again, it's just, pausing, absorbing, listening, and then helping ensure that you are representing yourself and sharing.
Right. No, that's great advice, and I'll have to remember that in the future.
Yeah. Hopefully nobody will tell you you're not ambitious.
What role does industry collaboration and policy advocating in driving systematic change to increasing diversity in semiconductors?
Yeah, it's very important. I mean, we're a huge global industry. We're extraordinarily diverse if you just think geographically and nothing else. It's incredible. But there's so much more that we can do and so much more to be done. It is amazing, the communities that we are building. Like I said, I'm 53. When I started in my career 23 years ago at AMD, and I think about just our company right now, I'm so incredibly proud and excited by it. But we can't do it alone. Thankfully, we're a bigger company now, so we do have more market influence than perhaps we've had before, and more people care about what we're doing. But it is really partnering with the Semiconductor Industry Association. It's partnering with the GSA, the Global Semiconductor Association, sponsoring different activities, sharing our voice and our experiences, but also really reaching out to all our stakeholder groups, right? We're very present in communities, so making sure that we're engaging actively with the communities. We're very involved in education, in the types of people we're hiring and wanting to attract to our industry. We deal with Wall Street a lot. Shareholders, we're public companies. They're very interested in what we're doing and how we're advancing, in particular, underrepresented groups. And then on the government side, making sure that we are there representing policy and that we are, collectively pushing things forward. So it's having that agenda, it's having goals, just like Teresa and her colleague showed here earlier about the focus of where we want to be and staying true to them, and really calling them out in every opportunity we have. And then it's working with peers. I mean, we may be competitors in one way, but in so many other ways we're not. We're friends. We're friends and we are colleagues, even if our paychecks come from different companies. And the more we can bring the collective together to push the agenda forward, the more progress we will make.
Yeah, no, I agree, because sometimes everybody says, Teradyne and Advantest, you guys don't talk.
Right.
But actually some of my good friends are from there.
Yeah.
So I love that, right? Because you're human.
You are. We are at the end of the day.
Yeah. And now you've talked about a lot of the ERG groups that you have within AMD, and a lot of it comes to fostering a sense of belonging, right? And so what are some of the key initiatives that you put through in order to foster that sense of belonging within the company?
Yeah, our founder 55 years ago, Jerry Sanders, had this sort of ethos that he rested the company on, which was people first, products and profits will follow. In the Lisa Su world, it's probably people, products, and profits. But the thinking is that no matter how amazing your technology or IP or capability is, at the end of the day, we're reliant on the people in the company and a vibrant and positive culture to lift the profitability of the entities that we are. And we've maintained that culture. It's been very important that we are people-centric. It's something we highly value. As I said earlier, the ERGs are a big part of it as we think about embracing everyone's preferences and diversity and creating conversation and allowing free-forming voices. Because the more voices you have, it brings it then to the decision-making table. And let's put it all on the table. Let's think about it, because even if we don't adopt certain things, to have thought about them wholesomely and thoroughly by having the conversation, you'll make a better decision. There's just no doubt about it. Learning and development is something that's very, very important. Feedback is something we thrive on as a company. We have something called the Next 5% that we celebrate at AMD, which is, even if you're doing the most mundane or repetitive of projects or tasks, your goal every day is to leave it 5% better than when you touched it yesterday. And all those increments add up to something really big as you look back over your shoulder after a number of months. And as we think about advancing diversity, it can be very daunting and it can feel huge. So we've put it into, for our annual bonus, we have 3 financial metrics that make up 80% of our bonus. And then we have 20% of our bonus, which is tied to something called strategic milestones. And these strategic milestones are important things to the company, like certain product tape-outs or quality metrics. And last year we added the number of female and underrepresented group level of hiring we wanted to do in the company in a given year. That has helped some of our leaders think about the global pool of talent available to us, and we all shouldn't be hiring people just like us. And that's really helped advance that. So we've had some good progress there. And then last but not least, we have a program called Advance at AMD, which is our internship program. And we really use everyone that we've brought through our learning and development programs to allow interns to shadow them for 6 to 9 months period, and to give them a rotation of experiences so that if it helps them decide what they don't want to do, that's as good as ultimately helping them get to where they want to be. Exactly. So we spend quite a bit of time on that as well, and that's something that's gotten really good feedback.
That's perfect. Before I open it up to the audience for questions, what advice would you give the people in the audience in being a good ally?
Yeah, first of all, be interested. Just be interested in the people in your team, or if you don't have a team, the people you work with. Listen. When you're in meetings or you're working on projects, there's always somebody who has ideas, but for some reason, that person's ideas aren't heard. And if you can just, in a moment, pause and recognize that person and what it is they've been trying to say, and invite them and invite the room to listen to the point that they were trying to make, it's huge. It's huge for that person, but it's also huge for the company that you're keeping in that moment. And once you do that a few times, it really opens up the direction that future engagements can take. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. And I would encourage you to just reflect on being a Mac. Maybe you need a Mac yourself, so mentor, advocate, coach, or connector. You can be that. You can be that to anyone. You don't have to be a leader. You don't have to be a manager to do that. But if you commit to it, please listen. And think about talking being 80% listening and 20% actual words out of your mouth.
Great advice. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So I wanted to open up for questions in the audience. Is there any questions that you would like to ask Ruth? There's microphones at the edge here.
Hello, hi. I'm
Hi.
Khushbu from AMD.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good, thank you. I have a question about mentorship versus sponsorship, right? So these two terms look very similar, but there are subtle differences. So you talked about mentorship programs, right? So what can we do to, also get, some sponsorship? Because when it comes to promotions, we're also looking for that kind of support and allies, right? So any thoughts about that?
Yeah. Okay. So sponsorship, you're probably looking for, well, you're not probably. For sponsorship, you're looking for somebody who's going to be in the room when you and your career are being discussed in your absence. So you need to sort of identify who those people are, and then you need to invite them to be a coach, to help connect you to others, invite them to get to know you, share with them where you are in your career, share with them what's important to you, what motivates you. I call it your employee value proposition. What is it that you see yourself doing in the next 3 to 5 years, and making sure that they know that. Because often in the room, it's not necessarily the promotion, but it's the projects that come up along the way. It'll be like, oh, okay, like I'm running integration for ZT Systems. I don't get a ZT Systems integration team, so I'm plucking people around the company, and it's very easy for me to go to my go-to list of people that I know. But when I ask my peers and colleagues, well, who should be on my team, they were like, oh, well, Nitza, for example, I know she's really interested in learning a bit more about XYZ. Why don't you tap her on the shoulder? So ensuring that there's somebody who has enough knowledge as it relates to you, and I'll tell you, it pays. So 10 years ago, when Lisa was announced as CEO of the company, I was really tired. I had worked with all the CEOs, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to just take a bit of a break. And she's like, you can't do that. I need your help. And anyway, we ended up having this conversation whereby she thought I was very black and white in my job. There wasn't a lot of gray in my world. And part of it was because I worked with Wall Street, and there was the SEC, and it was all total sidebar sometime over a beer. But she had the foresight to say to me, I don't even know you. Like, what is it that motivates you? What is it you want to do? I don't know anything about you. So we agreed to go on a journey. She asked me, could she be my mentor? And over that 6 months, we wrote down a list of the things that are important to me and what motivates me. And one of my key motivators is learning and growing. And the other list was, what were the things I imagined in an imaginary world that I might like to do at AMD over the next 10 years.
How wonderful.
We meet twice, well, we meet every day, but we meet twice a year to talk about me, and we take out that list once a year. And my job title is because of that list, right? I worked with Wall Street all the time. HR was on my list, marketing was on my list, IT was on my list. There were just lots of things. And she's committed, she's invested, she's a sponsor, because she now knows me really, really well. I got super lucky 20 years into my career. You too can be really lucky, and the way to do it is to make sure that somebody knows you and what motivates you and drives you. So there you go. Thank you for your question.
Is there any other questions? Kathy? Oh, can you go to the mic, please? Thank you.
I have a question. Do you see a slowdown in the DEI trend, that companies are closing their DEI offices and it seems to be being pushed under the mat a little bit? Do you see that too? Or I just wondered, and what could we do? What do you recommend? I mean, see, you have some good techniques.
Thank you. It's a bit of a mixed bag. I don't see companies pushing their efforts and activities under the carpet, for want of a better analogy, but there are some offices and the formality of the title being removed in some companies. And that's because of some challenges in terms of legal challenges within some companies, sidebar cases, but also because some companies think that they'll have more success if they make it an integral part of their human resource activities, as opposed to giving it a handle, or community affairs activities, or whatever way they look at it. So you're seeing a more broader approach than perhaps we've seen before. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing yet, because we're in the very early stages of it. I personally believe we should call it out, and we should have formal, identified, reportable activities, because we all react to metrics, and when we're measured, we all know we perform very well. So I think that continues to be important. So I would not want to see the measurement and metric capability decline, but it's something to watch very carefully because it is a mixed bag right now. Thank you.
Teresa McLaurin, ARM. So you mentioned metrics, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah.
How do I get measured for a DEI activity?
Yeah.
How is that measured? What is some examples that you can think of?
Yeah. So, I mean, it can be daunting and difficult because sometimes the metrics may not necessarily apply to what the activities that actually occur in your company, right? So, and then there's a whole conversation around quotas. Oh my God, do we want quotas? No, we don't want quotas. So what we do is we have done a look across all the geographic demographics of our employee population. And we've looked at underrepresented groups, and we've looked at females at engineering, at AMD in particular, and we look to increase that by a percentage every year that's higher than the industry. So we benchmark ourselves against our competitors. We publish that internally as our goal, and we have the HR team help manage it as opposed to making it rest on every manager's shoulders. We found through centralizing it in HR, it's made it more of an effective activity. We have built down into the organization managers needing to nominate a certain number of underrepresented community employees or female employees into certain learning and development courses, or having a certain percentage of their team being dedicated to feedback activities or coaching activities that the company sponsors. We also bring our leadership into speaking at external events and making sure that we're measuring that and how we're driving that forward. And then as it relates to community activities in particular, we also measure that internally to be involved in our community so that you're getting indirect exposure to the society in which the company is represented so that we can advance that as well. And then last but not least, everybody is mandated to do unconscious bias training. You get a report on that on a quarterly, the leader of the organization gets a report on that on a quarterly basis to make sure that it's being executed too, because we feel strongly about it.
Okay, thanks. I know we're out of time, but I just have one more question. That's been, at least
Yes.
especially in the US.
Yes.
So what do you do about that if you're trying to hire, say, more females to help round out the team? How do you find them?
Well, you need to be creative. So we have modified how we write job specs. So job specifications, some of the language that are used in job specifications, we wouldn't even know it, but can be off-putting to certain underrepresented groups in applying for a job. So we have run those through more inclusive language to attract people when they see the job description. We have worked on returnship programs, so bringing experienced people who may have left to go start their own family for a while that have been out of the workplace. We've developed an onboarding program for them to come back into the workplace and sort of fast track them over a 2 to 3 year period before they can go back into a like level job maybe when they left. We have very flexible programs, so the days of working 8 to 6 or whatever way you want to define your work day, way more flexible now. If you can get all your work done at a certain time of a 24-hour clock, that works for you and it's reasonable and agreeable to your manager. If you're not, can't be in the workplace physically, a lot of that flexibility has really made a positive difference. Mm-hmm. But the way to really, really, really get this going is to invest in attracting underrepresented groups to STEM. I mean, and to do it consistently, right, coherently, so that we can build the next generation of semiconductor professionals is very, very important.
Yep. All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ruth, for
Great.
your time.
Yeah,
I know everyone's ushering us off
Sorry.
stage. But thank you so much for your insights.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
That
Thank
was great.
All right, thank you so much, Nitza and Ruth. That was a very engaging conversation and something that we really appreciate out here. So thank you very much. All right. Oh, wait a second. Is there something wrong with the title here? I mean, Llamas at ITC. That's kind of a little strange, but perhaps we do need a bit of a petting zoo to drive some comfort on this otherwise intense day. I think people are a little bit distracted, and I think that's a good thing. So Meta's global infrastructure is foundational to the technologies and services we offer to our global community every day. So Sriram Sankar is Director of Silicon Lifecycle Engineering at Meta, and there he leads teams that are responsible for the entire lifecycle of Meta AI silicon at scale. Previously, Sriram led teams that are responsible for hardware health and availability of the global compute storage AI server fleet at Meta. And prior to Meta, Sriram led the engineering organization responsible for server and data center infrastructure at GoDaddy. At Microsoft, Sriram was responsible for the technical strategy and architecture of Microsoft's global data center footprint. And Sriram has a master's and PhD in computer science from the University of Virginia with over 10 patents and more than 50 publications. His team's work on silent data corruptions has been featured in several media articles, including the New York Times and other prominent technical blogs, and actually right here at ITC. So allow me to welcome, I'm very proud to do so, my metamate, Sriram Sankar.
Thank you, Savita. Sorry, thanks. Hey, folks, good afternoon, and thank you, Savita, for an excellent and long introduction. I really enjoy being here. I feel like, ITC is a community that I can have a kindred spirit. I can talk to people and they go, yeah, silent data corruptions, right? So that's something that I really enjoy. So thank you for having me here. Today I'm going to be talking about AI, but I also talk about our journey which took us here and what we have to look for in the future. At Meta, I've had the distinct honor, or should I say the fortunate place of looking at every single silicon that has come into our fleet across last 8-9 years. CPU, DIMMs, GPUs, flash, storage. My teams have had the fortune really to look at all the issues. Some battle scars, the good, bad, and ugly, so to speak. So I speak with a lot of data and experience. But then recently I took on a role to support our custom silicon efforts, what we call MTIA, Meta's Training and Inference Accelerators. I'm excited about the opportunity because I get to work from the ground up and solve a lot of challenges that have plagued our community for a lot of years. So with that, when I was building this talk, I was talking to Manohar Palluri. He was here last year talking about AI. And he said, why don't you ask Meta AI about title and so on. I did one better. I asked Meta AI to tell me what I do at Meta. So this, I think, is a good, accurate representation of what I do at Meta. It's about herding llamas in the data center. But for people that don't know, Llama is our large language open source model. It has been downloaded 300+ million times. But there's a lot of things that go behind the scenes in making a large training model work, right? As part of my talk, I will cover that. But before I go into that, I wanted to give a notion of the scale. I say, how do we test for AI at hyperscale? But what is that scale, right? So Meta, as a company, as a huge consumer, or our user scale is tremendous, right? So we have close to 4 billion people that are using one of our products, Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, or WhatsApp, every month. We have 200 billion plus reels that run on Facebook and Instagram every day. We have 600 million plus conversations that happen between businesses and customers every day. So we have a huge surface, we have a huge customer base. And we need to really have a at-scale infrastructure to serve our application that serve these customers. So what does that look like? So we have data centers across the globe. These are distributed, large facilities that house hundreds of thousands of servers. These are global, and we have to run services in a distributed manner, in a reliable manner, to service our applications. So if you have not seen data centers or been in one before, data centers are multiple times the size of a football field, tens of football fields actually put together. This is just an aerial view of some of our data centers. You see generators, even an electrical substation. You see one of the pictures is an air handling unit. These are pretty large. I've been in those rooms, and you see that pressure going through when they are cooling air inside the data centers. So all of these facilities house a lot of components and servers in them. So components and servers, drives, systems, racks, they need to come together, networks. So this slide shows some pictures of our racks, one of our storage trays, one of our network, design that we submitted to OCP. All of these things need to work together at our scale, hundreds of thousands of servers, millions of them across our data centers, working together to serve our services globally. The other thing that we have also done is to submit all of our hardware designs to Open Compute Project. So anything that we have built and deployed in our Facebook data centers, in Meta's data centers, we have submitted to Open Compute Project. And we continue to do so. This just shows our journey from 2011 till 2023 across compute, storage, network, and also some AI systems in the recent past. So the best thing about this that I love is, all of these, contain our partnerships with different manufacturers, different ODMs, different suppliers. We work with a lot of this community in making sure we are able to build and deploy them in our data center. So given this scale, in this talk, I have 3 major areas that I'm going to cover. One is a topic that this community probably already knows, but I'm still going to cover it because I'm going to show some insight into how we developed our muscle to deal with silent data corruptions at our scale, and why is it important for AI applications to deal with this important problem. The second thing that I'm going to focus on is our challenges of the present. We are building large AI clusters to train our Llama models. What are some of the challenges we face, and why is testing incredibly important as we deploy these large clusters? And finally, I'm going to talk about testing for our future. We are building our own custom silicon that I mentioned. I'm going to talk about our MTIA, Meta's Training and Inference Accelerators, and what are some of the challenges, or what should we look for when we are thinking about years into the future. With that, silent data corruptions. This was probably before I started giving keynotes on this topic. I started building the slides, and I said, 2 plus 2, everybody knows that it should be 4. But then silent data corruption happens when silently hardware returns an erroneous value, right? 2 plus 2 equal to 5. So when I started putting these slides together, my son, he was pretty young at that time, and then he came in and said, you cannot put this up in your talk. People are going to laugh at you, right? And he is right. He is right? But then that showed me an important thing. This was before our paper was published. This was public. But that showed me a very important thing. His expectation is not wrong. When you think about computing, even when programmers or software engineers think about computing, you think about giving a set of instructions to the computer and getting back accurate results. When your fundamental expectation of accuracy is not satisfied, you have a big problem, right? So I'm not comparing like my son's expectation, but I'm just saying as a community, different communities have expectation on the hardware community that we delivered accurate results back to them. So what are silent data corruptions? They are silent errors in silicon. They are very hard to detect. There are instances where it has gone undetected for days, months, years, right? There was an instance where we had to go look for a computed value in the archive system and trace back how it got computed to a wrong value. And it has significant impact to our services. Engineers across hardware, software, or production environments spend a lot of time trying to debug what went wrong when hardware doesn't have a clue about what went wrong. So when we initially started talking about this to some of our partners and vendors, there's a very common thing. Like, but wait, cosmic rays, everybody knows about this problem, soft errors, radiation, you're going to fit, bit flip, you're going to face some errors, like, don't worry about it, the industry knows about it, and so on, right? So yeah, they were maybe partly right, but then they were also absolutely, way off in magnitude on what we are seeing in the fleet, right? So typically, cosmic ray-induced frost, 1 in a million, and I said, okay, I accept it, what you're saying is right. So then what we did, we ordered a bunch of GM counters, sent it to our data centers, measured the radiation, did a different altitude, and like looked at different correlations. And no, it's not 1 in a million, it's not cosmic ray-induced fault alone. We saw data corruptions that were 1 fault in 1,000 devices, right? And this is just a pictorial representation. If you're following the screen, on the right-hand side, like when I put that up, you see some of the dots moving across our infrastructure. There is a dot on the left-hand side also, by the way. You just don't see it because it's 1 in a million, right? This is an important point to note, because when you have millions of devices in your fleet, you are going to end up seeing faults that happen at this magnitude, and that's what happened to us. This is something that was, like unexpected to us, because we thought like what the industry thought, and we said, okay, this is new. We need to go figure out what the heck is happening, because this is something that is impacting our applications, right? So for us, it was a needle in a haystack kind of scenario. We were not able to understand where the problem was happening, which hardware it was happening at. And this is also very difficult for us because we are looking at hundreds of thousands across servers across the data centers. And this keeps moving about. The size of our infrastructure is growing. It is a very diverse, very varied infrastructure. And we needed to pinpoint this needle in a haystack problem. So we said, okay, we need help. We went to our vendors. And again, I'm talking about the journey to show you an important point, right? When we see signals, when we call for help and we say, hey, it is just like one-off issue, it is a manufacturing defect, it is there. This was a turning point for us. I remember clearly that instance where I said, to my team, okay, what does it take? What does it take to like kind of pinpoint that needle in that haystack, right? So we started building infrastructure. We started building test methodologies to go figure out that problem. So because without that, we knew something was happening. We knew something was happening in our fleet, but we are not able to like isolate. We are not able to pinpoint the reason or like where it was happening. So this is an example that we published in our first paper on this topic. There's another story that I'll come to for the first paper we published, but this case study is probably familiar with the folks in this audience as well. So this is about Spark database, where we are doing a simple compression, decompression kind of function. And when you try to do the decompression, you call Scala's like power math.power function, and it tries to like compute 1.1 to the power 53. When it does that, there is unfortunately or fortunately for us, because this was the turnaround, it was scheduled on a particular defective core in a defective CPU. And the result was 0. Again, I say the unfortunate, fortunate part, right? It is fortunate that the result was 0, because the code has a logic to check if the result was 0, then you don't write the rows into the database, right? It's a very common way people build code, so you don't want to only for non-zero values you end up writing into the database. And in this, there were missing rows. And our application stack had that instrumentation to check for it. That's another important thing, right? If Meta did not build the instrumentation across its stack, we wouldn't have been able to find this issue as well. So a bunch of things came together to show us how a silent data corruption was propagating up the application stack, and a set of instrumentation, days of debug from all of our teams figured out that this was actually a silicon defect, it's a hardware problem, right? So what does it take for us to go, isolate this fault though, right? This is the engineering effort behind the scenes to go tackle something like silent data corruption. So when things are written in a very high-level distributed language, you're not able to easily debug it to a specific instance, a specific core, a specific CPU. So you need to break it down into something that can instrument things for you. You can profile things. You need to break it into something that is manageable. You can put some checkpoints in and so on. So we got it down to 400,000 lines of assembly. Still a lot, because it's no mean task to go through, look at assembly line level reproduction. But that was still not enough. We needed to kind of weed out what we didn't need, prune a lot of stuff. We have to do a lot of best practices at getting down to a very, very scalable, very, very simple reproducer, and which we did. We went from a highly distributed application level debug down to assembly level, from 100,000 lines of code to 60-line reproducer. Why? Because one of our vendors said that they didn't believe that it was silent data corruption, it was some random defect. That, again, is the turning point. That forced us to go down this testing methodology of building directed test. And we said, okay, we're not just going to give you the defective part. We're going to give you the defective part and the simplest reproducer in 60 lines of assembly code. So, go run it, go figure it out, and tell us where the issue is, right? But it doesn't stop there, right? Because there is continuously, we are managing a large fleet. There is going to be continuously these kind of, once we knew that this was there, we needed to figure out how to scale it, right? How to figure out where else this could be happening. So from one silent data corruption, we needed to move to hundreds of them in our fleet. So we needed to really scale our approach. Again, no such infrastructure existed, no such methodology existed for us. So we needed to build everything from scratch. This is something we take seriously. At Meta, we have a lot of ownership across the stack. We try to kind of not just say, hey, we found this one issue here, take it over and then go. We try to build it into a systemic way to scale it, and we also share it back with the community. Again, these are all papers that we have published. So, but going back to why was this a hard problem? Why is scaling? Why is detecting silent data corruptions a hard problem? If everything was just 60-line assembly code, you ran it, and you're all done, then we are done, right? But there is a lot of data randomization. Something that can work for a set of operands doesn't work for another set of operands. Something that can work for a specific set of electrical variation doesn't work for another. Something that can run in one data center at different temperature humidity parameters doesn't work for another data center. And there is also something that we tested now versus tested 6 months later, we might fail for a data corruption. All of these led us to not have approaches which is on the failure path, but approaches that needs to run continuously. And when I say continuously, we largely bucket it into two different aspects. One is run in non-production state, which is when we are not serving application traffic. Another, which is extremely hard to do, is to co-locate it with applications. Think about, these are all destructive tests. What I mean by that is it's actually going and testing something in a functional block or a particular instruction sequence in your CPU. So necessarily, you're going to impact some kind of performance. So we have to do it in a very well-orchestrated manner and a very well-scheduled manner. And so we built two methodologies, Fleet Scanner and Ripple, which we call them. to go look at them. The idea behind them is very simple, right? So the fleet scanner, I mean, execution is hard. The idea behind them is simple. The fleet scanner is more like a pit stop approach, right? So when you have, when you're running a race, when you're like delivering, services to our customers, you need to take pit stops in the middle to do some maintenance, maybe firmware upgrades, maybe repairs, maybe like kernel upgrades and so on. So you have some amount of like downtime where you can run directed tests to detect whether there are silent data corruptions. So that is the first methodology. So we have done huge amount of stride in this methodology. Initially, when we were talking about this, it used to take us 6 months to converge on our fleet size. We have reduced it to 1.5 months. Remember that this is opportunistic testing. So there is, only when there are events like that, we are able to like test for these in our fleet. But we have more than 110 billion, fleet seconds of test time. This is significant test time. I cannot underscore how important this was in identifying data corruptions in our fleet. But still, this is not enough across a live fleet. If I tell somebody, hey, I know this issue is happening in our fleet, it's going to corrupt your application, and by the way, it's going to take me 1.5 months to figure out, they are not going to be happy with that, right? So we needed to come up with something better, something that is, again, from an idea, it is, oh, you know what, just co-locate testing with the workloads, right? But execution-wise, it's extremely hard to do. It needs very fine orchestration, scheduling, ability to like work alongside application without causing a perceptible performance impact on the application. So we did that. I think still now, I think it's one of the largest, silent data corruption test frameworks I feel across, all industry. We are able to reduce test times to the order of milliseconds and decrease our time to coverage to 7 days. That, for detecting something that the hardware has no clue about and it is happening across a large globally distributed fleet, and to converge on something within 7 days when application and production are running, it was not easy, extremely challenging, but the teams got to do that, and I'm extremely proud of this. We published a paper around this as well. And every single month, we have 350 million fleet seconds of test time that is running on a live fleet. Again, I don't think it has been like executed at that scale before. So still, we run both methods because fleet scanner gives us a lot of opportunistic testing, a lot of test time, a lot of time to bake systems or clusters before we deploy. Ripple testing gives us a lot of ability to converge quickly on certain fault modes in our fleet. But with all of these, we initially said, hey, we have like 1 defect per 1,000 devices. With a lot more methodology, with a lot more experiences, with a lot more signature of SDCs, we continue to find silent data corruptions in our fleet. I think now it is in the order of 1 defect per 500 devices. And we continue to build novel methodologies, novel signatures, novel SDC detection. But I still am concerned about this area because we don't have a good idea of what is that percentage that we still do not know about. Because our methodology, in the absence of silicon-driven approaches, is a black box methodology. We are approaching it from an application level. We are approaching it from instruction sequences and SDC signatures. We are looking for patterns. We are running it across a live fleet. But I still don't know the depth of that iceberg there. And that really scares me. And I think as a community, it should scare all of us. So just to recap, our journey with silent data corruptions. It has been a journey from the time when we initially started seeing fleet sightings, when we started working with our vendors, when we started figuring out how to debug and tackle this problem at scale. It has been a lot of challenges. It has been a lot of innovation, a lot of discoveries on how these things happen. And also the key thing there for us is how do we get the community involved, right? So in our first paper, I remember very vividly when we were publishing our first paper, there's a lot of pushback against this, right? People are saying, oh, you guys cannot publish this. It's going to open up a can of worms. This is not, at that level that we have seen, and so on and so forth. And I remember pushing very strongly saying, this is something that the industry needs to know about, right? If we do not know that this is the rate at which things are happening in a large fleet. Remember that only very few people have millions of these devices running across their data centers. Only very few people can actually look at the scale of the problem. And luckily for us, after we published our first paper, Google validated with their Mercurial course paper, and then Alibaba published another more detailed characterization paper, which validated that that is the scale at which other people are also seeing this issue. So it is not just us, it is the entire community. It is an actual problem. It is something that needed to be looked at. So there is, from then on, there is a lot more effort on this. We did an RFP with academia. We wanted it to open up to universities. We wanted like the best and brightest research minds to like contribute to this problem area. We awarded RFP from Meta, and then we partnered with OCP. If you're interested, please check out the OCP server resilience workstream, where we have the like STC detection like RFP, and we are working with 7 universities. There are 5 universities. There are 7 companies on that: Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, ARM, Microsoft, Google, and Meta are all part of the OCP workstream. Finally, I think we also have a lot of work right now happening on the AI SDC detection, which we will talk about in a bit. But I wanted to give this at the beginning of my talk to show the journey. What does it take for a customer to go into silicon level issues, bring them to the community, do the engineering work that's required to like find them at scale, and then open it up for research. It is not a small task. While doing it, it was extremely challenging, but I'm very happy where it is right now. I see a lot of universities, I think 70+ universities are now working on this. A lot of the community are like kind of looking at this problem. So I'm very glad, but we are not done. Remember the tip, the iceberg? I still don't know the depth of the iceberg. And personally, to be honest, and I'll share this with the community, like my teams at Meta wouldn't necessarily want to be the ones finding that out. I'd love to get this community involved in that, size the problem for us, enable like kind of approaches to detect and solve STCs. So trust is important. Please also remember the 2 + 2 = 5 example. Trust, when it comes to computing, is extremely important. Software engineers, programmers, the community that depends on the hardware community to give that trust, we need to hold that at a very high level. So silent data corruption is a foundational problem. It is impacting not just regular compute, but AI compute as well. We'll talk about it. But testing investments across the life cycle are a key to establish that test, and that is why it's extremely relevant to this community here. With that, AI. Right? I know everybody wants to talk about Llama and like go into like the AI large cluster deployment. Like AI has had a huge evolution over the few years. That's probably an understatement, given like a lot of talks from keynotes to everything happening, and a lot of energy in that ecosystem. So whether it's text to image generation, like I said, I use that to generate that picture of me herding llamas. Whether it's large language models, whether it is creation tools that people can use across our platforms, AI is in a lot of different places, enabling a lot of different use cases. And Meta has been at the forefront of this AI innovation. Our journey is started in enhancing user experiences, but recently we have open source contributed our large language models back to the community. Llama 3 heard of models from when it came out. It's 350+ million downloads. A lot of tens of thousands of like services using Llama on top. And like we also recently released our multimodal and the small models, 1 billion and 3 billion, in addition to our like flagship 405 billion and 70 billion models. So and there is a lot of security features like Llama Guard and so on. So there's an entire ecosystem around Llama 3. This part of my talk is going to go into what like got that to that stage, right? How did we build the infrastructure behind Llama? So for delivering larger and larger models, the compute investments that needs to like happen, compute requirements rather, is growing at 7x year over year. That is, I think people saw Shankar's keynote earlier today. It is much higher than like kind of Moore's law and like growth of predictions and investments happening in this area. With that comes a lot of challenges, right? So we need to have compute working alongside network, storage, software, services, all working together to enable a large cluster that can train our larger models. And then this advanced infrastructure is going to propel us towards AGI. But there's a lot of steps in that process. It is a real challenge of scale. For example, our Llama 3 system infrastructure, which housed more than 15 trillion tokens, ran on 16K H100 GPUs. This pushed our model to new heights, but also pushed our infrastructure to be extremely efficient to serve these models. We had a lot of challenges along the way. This was not as simple as, hey, let's just put the cluster together, put everything together, it's going to work right out of the box, and we're going to have our training model done. The Llama 3 is a published paper. I'll highly encourage the audience to go look at it. There was a very popular table in there that talked about the failures that we encountered when running Llama 3 model, right? So the interruption sources for the model are many. When you're running, one large training job on a large 16K clusters, you are going to stop or crash the job for a variety of reasons. Some of the reasons are things like configuration, software issues, network tuning, and all that. So network is definitely complex, right? So debugging network issues is extremely complex as well. Configuration issues are complex as well. But you harden them over time. What you cannot escape from is hardware faults. When hardware fails, you necessarily have to stop. You have to detect where the failure is. You need to recover from it, and from a checkpoint, and then rerun the training job. So it directly impacts the stability of that cluster. This is there is a table. I just call out a couple of things in here. GPU is one of the top failing components in there. The DRAM memory is one of the other top component in there. There are SDCs, the silent data corruptions in this too. We'll talk about it in a couple of slides. But the fact being 70% plus of training job interruptions are hardware failures. And there are different ways in which we can test for them, in which we can figure out how to protect our cluster from them. I'll talk about some of them. But before doing that, I do want to call out, why does it matter? Why does it matter, that we have hardware failures? We've had hardware failures. Hardware failures are, eventually every hardware system will have failure, right? So, but then this is a very interesting concept about larger and larger models getting trained on larger and larger clusters is that there is a math that works against us in there. So as you build larger clusters, the time that the cluster can stay alive without having a hardware interruption becomes an important constraint. So if you look at a 60K cluster and then extrapolate it to an 100K cluster, there's only going to be 10 minutes of useful work that you can do before there is a crash on that cluster. And that is your time to do useful work, but that's also your time to detect, remediate, resolve, and put in a new host back into the system to take that training job. That is a significant challenge for us. Why? Because think of this a cluster having multiple hardware systems, and then there is a failure somewhere. I say somewhere because sometimes hard faults are nice, because I know that something reliably failed somewhere, and then I can go just swap that in and then run things on there. But not all hardware faults are that way. There are intermittent faults, there are silent faults, and it becomes extremely hard for us to debug them. So the first thing for us to optimize is time to detect, right? We need to be extremely good at detecting where hardware issues are happening. How do you detect things? Hardware can give you signals. It can write to some log. It can give you some events. Or you run tests to detect what is happening wrong with your hardware. All that needs to happen within a short span of time. Second thing that needs to happen is we need to replace hardware with the good hardware. And then we need to restart our training job from a checkpoint and rerun the entire job again. And this keeps happening multiple times for different hardware errors. That's not nice as well, because when we are initially setting up clusters, there's the initial deployment issues. Then we are setting up clusters. These don't nicely happen in individual time periods. These happen at different time periods and so on. So once we make the cluster stable, we have a lot of stable iterations, and we run our Llama hard of models. So overall, why hardware failures and silent data corruptions matter for AI clusters is testing. The time that we take to test, detect, resolve, and recover is an important first-order constraint for AI clusters. It is fundamentally different than a regular compute cluster, like even a single hardware failure can take down a cluster level job. So increasing early stage silicon test and doing a lot of like pre-test becomes extremely important for us when it comes to AI clusters. But again, there is a trade-off in there. I cannot take infinite time to make sure my cluster is stable, and I cannot prevent all hardware failures from happening in my AI cluster as well. So there is a very difficult trade-off that we need to optimize for. So finally, silent data corruption, tying the first part of my talk to AI workloads. A lot of people, I do this because a lot of people come and tell me, hey, why should we care about, I mean, AI workloads are so tolerant, like nothing is going to happen and so on. I want to dispel that notion. AI workloads do care about events. We published a paper. We showed like how many issues happen there. But just to summarize, on training, silent data corruptions are going to cause error propagation that is extremely hard to like go back and detect. So gradient explosion, corruption propagation. We have a lot of work in the domain. We have algorithmic fault tolerant work. We have NAND detection in PyTorch. We have periodic and opportunistic STC detection. So these are all venues where we have talked about or published papers around this. People also say, why should it matter for inference? It really depends on what you're doing with that inference, right? If it is recommendation or on specific impact to security, privacy, or policy, you need to like worry about it. So the difficult challenge for us there is understanding sensitivity of which models is more sensitive to like SDC. So we define something called parameter vulnerability factor, which is very similar to the AVF, architecture vulnerability factor, which talks about how like different models react to like SDCs. And we also have Dr. DNA that was published in ASPLOS, which talks about signatures of SDCs that you can detect for, and like how models, certain models are impacted by different signatures. I'm going to give you one example of how we test for some of these things in our fleet. There are different testing methodologies. I won't be able to go through all of them, but this is an example of how we run something called pre-flight checks, right? It's, like this is something that enables a large cluster to like have more stability. So when a gang of hosts are selected in a particular, for a particular training job, we check individual host with a lot of like kind of, think of this as like simple test, burn-in test that go and check for, hey, is this host ready? Is this host trustable that it's going to be stable for a longer time? And then we replace any faulty devices, we change the host list, and then like, do a distributed communication check, looking for network. We really need a way to like isolate failures before they can happen in the cluster. And we spend a lot of time to make sure a cluster is stable. So we call them pre-flight checks. So given all of the work on AI clusters, none of the problems went away, just the nature of how we look at it changed, and where we need to optimize also changed. Finally, I'm going to talk about the future, right? Meta training and inference accelerators, we are building custom silicon. They are called MTIA. So, like this is Mark holding one of our chips. This is really a great opportunity for us. So what was black box to us for a long time is now open. So we have ability to influence things all the way from design, architecture, implementation, down to like, like post-silicon and in production. So literally the entire silicon life cycle is something that we can optimize on. And I'm going to share some areas in here, and like we'll talk about what some of the opportunities are. So, but before that, I'm going to give you a couple of early chips that we have deployed in our data centers. So this is MTIA V1. It was a 7 nanometer chip, 25 watt TDP, 65 million flops. And the next chip that we released is a 5 nanometer technology, 90 watt, 103 million flops. All of these are things that are already in our data centers. The chips that we are working on are significantly larger, higher power TDP than these chips, that can serve like inference and training at our scale. Again, as a lot of people know in the audience, or probably already know, like a silicon development lifecycle, we need to worry about where reliability challenges are going to come from across these lifecycle. We need to put in features early on in the lifecycle. We need to test them. We need to simulate, emulate. We need to do a lot of pre-silicon work to like make sure we are able to, like timings are not closing, changes from, like design, changes, RFCs are coming in, HPM, we need to do some increases, frequency are changing. There's a lot of things that happens in the stages that we need to be guarding against, putting guardrails around. But also, like during, like bring up validation, we need to like kind of work on a lot more areas to do that. So then you go into the system level integration, EVT, DVT, PVT, and then mass production. So there is overall, I would say, there's a lot of things that happen across an entire life cycle that we need to focus on, primarily, with relevance to this community on diagnosis, issue debug, production enablement, and optimization. So the reason I kind of, point to all of these areas as opportunities is because we need to be working on all of them, not just one of them. There is no magic bullet in any one stage for us to go figure out SDCs or reliability issues. We need to do all of them. I'm going to just highlight 3 different areas, and I call like this rate of change of technology challenge here, because things are happening at a pace at which existing solutions are not able to keep up. I'm going to throw out some statements here because, yes, it's a visionary talk. It's something that challenges us, and I'm sure it challenges community too. One, the pace at which gate counts and power densities and technologies are scaling for the chips that we want to deploy for the AI applications, I don't think emulation is keeping up, right? So we have challenges with capacity, dev velocity. I mean, we expect to run a lot of our AI models and software in early stages. We want to shift left, and when we want to do that, there is not enough that can accommodate the needs for our applications. Second biggest challenge that we have is speed of flight releases. So as things are evolving, becoming more complex, it doesn't mean that we have increasing number of time or months to ship that product. The demand on us to ship products is accelerating as well. So we are shipping things in shorter time on things that are way more complex than before. And that is evident when we are bringing up systems, when you're doing characterization or software enablement. We are able to see this as a huge challenge that we need to tackle and we need to accelerate on. Finally, industry-leading reliability. I've already talked a lot about it, silent data corruptions. No silicon is going to be immune from things like data corruption. So we need to kind of provide good diagnostics, good product life cycle, good control over what we can ship as features after a product has shipped as well. So given that there is an opportunity, new frontiers for AI silicon from factory to fleet, there are things that this community already works on. There are things that we need to look at in a very different perspective, the customer perspective, right? A person who's deploying the AI models, whether it's training or inference, how are they going to look at RAS features? How are they going to run those capabilities in a large fleet? How are they going to do debugs in a large fleet? I talked about our Ripple framework, which is a live in-production silent data corruption detecting framework. I have not seen the equivalent of it coming from ground up, right? So we need to think about options or opportunities that can enable these use cases in a large production fleet. So there is a lot more that we can do through the process side also, yield, manufacturing. I think there's a lot of good talks in this conference about some of these things, and also Shankar's keynote touched about a bunch of these. So there's a lot of things that we can do on the manufacturing and yield side as well, looking across the life cycle. And finally, most important, what I want to do over time is to open up a lot of these things for the community to build upon, right? So user space diagnostics, configs, firmware. How can we do development and analytics, things like wear out, time-based diagnostics. So there's a lot of things that we can do from deployment systems, and we can kind of understand how these things operate at scale. So this is another area of opportunity. So the final takeaway for us, the third takeaway on the slide is technology is rapidly accelerating for AI silicon. It is not just Meta, it is happening across the industry. At every layer of the stack, complexity and reliability needs to be taken care of. We have lesser and lesser time to ship things that would have, something that we shipped earlier with a lot more time, the gate count, the power, the TDP, everything has increased, but we are shipping it within those time windows. So we need to have a lot of innovation and testing across the stack to achieve state-of-the-art reliability. I said, I have 1 in 500 SDCs. I don't want to see the number even more precipitously drop when we are doing our own silicon. So that is the call to action. That is the ask from the community. If you need one slide to take away today's keynote, it is the 3 T's of testing for testing AI at scale. Number 1 is trust. There's some fancy Meta AI Llamas in there. This is what I mentioned in the early part of my talk. Things like silent data corruptions erode the trust in our community. We need to really focus on that as an industry. 2, time. AI clusters, time is an important constraint. Time to detect, time to resolve, time to recover. So testing time is also very important for us to focus on. It is a large cluster, so we need to figure out how to like kind of distributedly test it as well. Finally, technology. What used to be, like scaling earlier at speeds of releases that we are accustomed to, it is not the same. The rate of change of technology is significantly higher now on the AI silicon stack. So all of us need to like think about how to like satisfy that. So with that, I know I'm a few minutes over, so I'll take questions offline. I don't think we'll have like enough time to take questions here, but I'll be available around for people who have questions. This I want to call out, the team got an Emmy award, Technology Emmy Award recently for our video accelerator. That's pretty cool. Like it's a fancy event with a lot of things. But also, like we are building out a lot of like functions around here. If you're interested to talk to me about it, there is a like code in here that you can go click and it's going to take you to the careers page. But also you can reach out to me, connect with me, and talk with me. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Yeah, I'll be available outside to take questions. Thank you.